What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you for tuning in. So, first things first, go ahead, hit the like button, follow, subscribe, depending on the platform. Leave a comment or a review, would greatly appreciate it. All feedback is good feedback to me. So, the 65 game rule in the NBA is now kind of in the spotlight once again. Now, if you don't know, NBA players have to play at least 65 games in a season to qualify for MVP, All NBA, All Defensive Teams, all those awards, Defensive Player of the Year, all that. The big name this year, obviously, that's not going to meet that threshold, at least currently, LeBron James. The other night, he sat out the second game of a back-to-back against the Thunder, which turned out to be his 18th missed game. So, do the math, he can only play 64 games, which means his season in terms of All NBA over. He was 22, I think 22 points, like 6 assists, 7 rebounds a game. Which I think if he kept that up for the rest of the year, he probably was going to make an All-NBA team or at least be a strong candidate for one of them. Well, not anymore. And I think the questions will come up about, is the 65 game thing necessary? Do they need to change it? Whatever. I think it's fine. I was a proponent of 70 games when they first talked about it, but 65 I can live with. Now I have seen, I believe it's the Spurs coach, no, JJ Redick himself, who's obviously LeBron's coach with the Lakers, he said the 65 game rule should be like something for voters in consideration, not like a, steadfast rule like 65, you're in or you're not. That's interesting because then you're now putting it into a judgment call with these voters. I don't know if I like that because I feel like you'll get some of them that will hold certain players accountable for 65 and they won't for others if they really like that player. So I get what JJ's saying. I don't think that's going to work. I think the way it is the way it is, and I'm fine with it. You're still allowed to miss 17 games. Now, obviously, if you do get an injury, that complicates things for you. But let's just say, everything is fine. You're cherry picking your dates you want to miss. You'd have 17 opportunities before you lose out. I feel like that's fine. No, if the 65 game thing is a problem, I feel like the way the owners would probably push back would be, well, then, okay, we'll shorten the season then. If you want less games as a threshold, shorten the season. We know players will never go for that because that would mean less money for them. So I think the 65 game rule is fine. I think we just have to live with it. If you're kind of opposing to it, it's here to stay. I think. At least it should be. I hope there isn't some time where, owners completely back down or the league backs down and does away with it. Because then we're back at square one with, the whole load management stuff. Because, quick aside, I do think it's kind of funny where, some guys won't play back-to-backs anymore. Which some of it is obviously injury related, like a Joel Embiid. I get that. But isn't it kind of like the way medicine has advanced compared to guys who played in the 80s, or I guess when I started watching the 90s, you had guys play back-to-backs all the time back then. Now, their bodies might have been beat up by the end of the season. I get that. But so was everybody else's. So it was like an even playing field. What changed between then and now? I think that would be a fascinating 30 for 30 or something. Obviously a lot of people look at it and they go Kawhi Leonard ruined it or whatever. And Kawhi, we know his body is kind of breaking down, but it's, I just wonder is that something that's just going to be persistent with the league, that the perception from fans will be, these players are soft. Now, today's athlete compared to yesteryear's athlete, they're bigger, they're stronger, all that. They're more athletic today. So I guess going against athletes like that does put more of a toll on your body. But once again, players today care a lot more about their diet, their training, and all that than they did back in the day because there's just more information now. But let's get back on track here. So LeBron can't make can't be nominated for any awards because he's over the threshold. Giannis, same thing, even though Giannis will probably be shut down for the season, so it doesn't really matter for him either way. But there are some other big name players that are coming up to that threshold that I think could, I guess, increase the volume for those who don't like the 65 game rule. Now, that would be like all these guys completely miss it, then maybe it turns into a bigger issue. I don't think it's going to happen, but here are some of the names. Wemby can only miss 3 more games. Wemby's a guy who's going to be Defensive Player of the Year consideration, obviously All-NBA. He'll probably get some MVP votes. Like, that's a big deal. Wemby's a young star in this league. I know he had the knee injury that he had, but he's one of the young, especially global stars that the league is trying to push. So obviously as many awards as he can rack up at the end of the year, the better. But he's got 3 more games left. He's got a little wiggle room. Another player, Kawhi Leonard. With the turnaround with the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard is definitely in the forefront of that, especially after they traded away Harden and Zubac. So Kawhi's another guy would get some All-NBA considerations. He probably would get some defensive team consideration. He is a two-way player. He's a bit older. I feel like some people, his defense isn't what he used to be, but he's still a pretty good defender. He only has 4 more games left, and with Kawhi's injury history, plus let's say end of the year, the Clippers, I don't know, are like set in a plane or something like that. Can they afford? Well, they probably would look to sit Kawhi some games to keep him fresh for the postseason. I don't know how much this will matter to Kawhi, but he's got 4 more to work with. And, coming out of the All-Star break, obviously you get kind of like that little sprint to the finish of the year because most teams have obviously played well more than half of their schedule. Jokic, he can only miss 1 more game. Jokic has dealt with some injuries this year, but he's a guy who's consistently in MVP conversations. So the fact that he only has 1 more game left to miss, I think it's pretty safe to assume that he falls short, but Jokic is a guy that normally answers the call anyway, so he's got 1 more game left, so just think about that. Anthony Edwards, another young player up and coming in this league, he's got 7 games to miss, which that's a number that he probably could manage and still get to 65, but he's a illness or something setback away from possibly falling short himself. And we know Ant is a guy that's very popular amongst fans, so that would be something that I think they wouldn't like for him to miss out on some of the awards and everything like that. Luka with the Lakers, big brand Luka, has 7 games left to miss, and Luka's a guy who's probably going to make some MVP ballots because of his stat line with the Lakers. And like I said, playing for the Lakers doesn't hurt him, but he's another guy that's probably going to be an All-NBA candidate. He's got 7 games left. And then Steph Curry, 2 games left before he falls short. And Steph Curry is also a big brand in the NBA. So yeah, those are some pretty big names that could potentially miss out because of the 65 game threshold. So, question is, if all those guys, or how many of those guys would have to miss the 65 game requirement before you change your mind on whether or not 65 games is good or bad for the league? Like for me, even if they all missed, I still think the 65 game thing is fair. But I do wonder if we get to a point that will they make like special provisions for guys dealing with injuries? I don't know. I think it's complicated if you start trying to put variables in it or make special exemptions. I think they kind of have to keep it at the number and just live with it and hope that your biggest stars find ways to not miss 18 games in a season. That's just me. I don't know. So, with that, that's all I got for you. Appreciate you tuning in. I really do. Like I said before, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe, or follow, depending on the platform. Share it out. Really appreciate it. And yeah. So I'll obviously talk to you probably the next day or so. Not sure what I'll talk about necessarily. Probably the All-Star game, actually. I do want to talk about the competitions and everything that are coming up on Saturday night. So I'll probably do an episode with some predictions and just some overall talk about the new format, the competitions, what they probably need to think about changing, all of that stuff. That'll probably be the next time you hear from me. So thanks again. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe. God bless. I'm out of here. All right. Bye.